Hello, this is Kelso with the Grim Reapers, and I'm here to conduct a hardware review on a new product from Winwing. Winwing manufactures FAA Level 5 simulators for the 172, amongst other general aviation simulator products. They also manufacture the larger F-18 HOTAS system, along with their combat and takeoff panels. Winwing's new desktop Orion HOTAS system introduces another choice for desktop users. Glancing over the instruction manuals, the critical components appear to be of metal construction rather than plastic. For disclosure, Winwing sent me the system for an honest review. They did not ask for or press for favorable comments, and similar to my last reviews, their statement remained, "Here's the stuff, what do you think?" Orion HOTAS desktop system consists of the Orion throttle and Orion flight stick. The throttle handles are the exact same used on their Super Taurus F-18 throttle. The flight stick is the exact same used on their Super Libra F-18 stick. I received the Orion system from Tony Lynn, Winwing's U.S. representative. Tony used it for a short period before forwarding it to me, so I won't be able to provide either open box or assembly segments to my review. However, in the coming days, you'll find other YouTubers post Orion reviews, which will include those segments. I encourage you to watch all the reviews for their perceptions, experience, and things I may miss today. After plugging in the Orion, I restarted my computer. In the DCS control menu, they identified as Winwing Throttle Base, F-18 Handle, and Joystick Base, F-18 Grip. They were not pre-configured at startup and required separate binding. This makes sense because all of their controls can be used across all flight sim modules. Binding the stick and throttle were generally straightforward. You may choose to run Winwing SimAppPro application while flying the F-18C because some of Winwing switches require telemetry from DCS to determine the in-game button state of those switches. The reason for this is DCS currently provides limiting toggle binds instead of on-off binds for some F-18 controls. The good news is we are seeing DCS updates slowly replacing some of these toggle binds with proper ones. If you choose to purchase any Winwing products, you'll have access to their SimAppPro software. This software will allow you to view and modify several of the control functions, including changing the lighting intensity of the throttle base. When you first open SimAppPro, you may get a message that says device has new firmware, please update. We're going to do that at a later time, but you will notice both controls will show up as choices under devices. I'm going to clear this. And we'll see both controls do come up. We'll look at the base first, and on that base, manipulate the throttles, the sliders, and let's look at that top or left switch. Activate the switch, and we'll see the button state change. We'll activate several of the other switches, buttons. And now the slider for the backlit on the case, on the base that is. Pretty bright. Taking this slider, going back and forth, and I'm going to put it about there. And while we're looking at that, you can see I'll switch the buttons. You can change the intensity for the air to ground and air to air button. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. There's many things that you can change on this, including some axes, and we'll get into that in another video. Winwing recently posted an Orion brochure on their Facebook page. I'll use the control diagrams from the brochure first, showing details of the Orion controls. Then I'll demonstrate the hardware in front of me. Orion F-18 throttle handles. Starting up in the upper left-hand corner, we've got a throttle designator control, TDC, a 12-bit slew axis with a push for designation. Next is a 16-bit Hall sensing spring-loaded rotary, that's up and down. They recommend antenna elevation control. Then we've got two buttons, simple button pushes. One's automatic throttle control. Next is harm, raid, flare, FOV switch, and a two-position switch designated as exterior lights. In the picture below, upper left-hand corner, communications switch, COM1, COM2, mids A, mids B. It's 5 directions, 4-way and a push. The next one at the top, dispenser switch, 4-way and a push, 5 direction. On the bottom is a simple button push. They show it as a cage, uncage button, and then above that, speed brake, extend, off, retract. This page of the brochure describes the Orion throttle has a full metal core and uses 4 16-bit Hall sensors, has no physical contact with the metal components. It uses aeronautical grade metal plugs for the throttles, independent friction adjustment, and the throttle handles are 1-to-1 sizing with the real F-18 throttle grip. This page of the brochure describes the throttle base controls. We'll start at the upper left-hand corner and work clockwise. First one is a 2-position launch bar. The next is a 2-position jettison switch. It's designated as a hook here. Then a 3-position plus a push wing fold switch. Then a 2-position landing gear switch. A 2-position parking brake switch. 3-position flap switch. And moving down, access with a mid detent, that's the 16-bit slider. Next is a helmet-mounted display brightness control, that's a button with a rotary. Next is a access with a mid detent slider, 16-bit Hall sensor. Next is a jettison button. Next is the 3-position master safe switch. Right lower now is the panel backlight adjuster. That's a button with an encoder. That's a rotary encoder. Going to the left is the course knob button with a rotary encoder. Then a heading knob button with a rotary encoder. We've got a 3-position autopilot pitch control and a 3-position autopilot roll control. Then a autopilot engaged disengaged button. Now notice these are highlighted with A10 controls, with F15 controls, and F16 control recommendations. On either side of the throttle, we've got independent throttle friction control. Going towards the center, we've got the air-to-ground button and the air-to-air button. We've got an additional emergency button. That's a count of 20 individual controls on this base. This page of the brochure describes the Orion joystick as having a full metal core construction with roller cams and polished surfaces, 2 16-bit Hall sensors on the axes with no physical contact. The Orion base comes stock as non-adjustable. The last page of the brochure describes the Orion joystick. Beginning at the middle left, we've got a 5-direction weapon select switch. That's 4-way and a push. Above, a weapon release button. To the right of that, a 5-direction sensor control switch. That's 4-way and a push. To the right of that is a pitch and roll trim hat. That's 9 directions. Actually 8 directions and a push. Just below that is the 5-direction Recce event button. That is 4-way and a push. In the right image, we show the dual stage gun trigger. Below that is the undesignate nose wheel steering engage button. And below that is the nose wheel steering disconnect autopilot override G limiter switch, referred to as the paddle. The Orion stick is a 1-to-1 size replica for the real-life F-18 stick. Alright, now for the live stuff. Starting with the throttle. Everything works. Everything has been bound and functions work perfectly in the game. Get my fat fingers out of the way. We can lock the throttles. Now notice we've got afterburner detent, power idle, power off, but no finger lifts. Pretty cool engineering design here, folks. There are ball bearings captured with spring backloads, and these points will roll over them for those detents. Cool piece of engineering. Okay, for the buttons, very solid hardware. Center stops. I like it. I don't know about you. Now going through the stick, over to the stick. Let me change hands. I put this on my Wheel Stand Pro because that's the way I've set it up. It can be placed on a desktop. Even on this, it's pretty solid. It's not slidey. Takes a little bit more effort, but it works. Trigger. Get my camera in view. And the paddle switch. I'm impressed, and the proof in the pudding for me is air-to-air refueling. I feel confident at it, and for me, it's a good indicator of system stock settings. Let's see how it goes. I have called for the basket from the S3 Viking, and I'm staring at the basket pod, not at the basket. I can see the basket in the peripheral vision, but I don't want to look at it. Controls feel smooth. Walking those throttles back and forth. Yeah. First try. I think this is fine. Here's a quick comparison between the Warthog and the Orion. Critical component material, plastic compression fittings versus metal roller cams, and the numerical differences between the throttle base controls and the stick controls. Of note, the Warthog has one slider, the Orion has two. The little inset above the Warthog stick is a picture of the TDC slew. It never worked for me, and I had to purchase an aftermarket replacement that cost well over $100 US. Following up from my last review on throttle travel length, I've added the Winwing Orion to the list. The travel distance of a throttle determines its mechanical sensitivity. A throttle with longer travel will have more sensitivity in adjusting speeds in small increments. A throttle with a shorter travel distance may need in-game curve adjustments to change the gradual onset of maximum thrust. Here are some throttle travel distances comparing the Winwing Taurus, the Winwing Orion, the Thrustmaster Warthog, and the Verbal 50CM2. These numbers may or may not play a part in your binding decisions. Generally, longer distances will be smoother in thrust changes. The arc length is the total distance traveled over the rotational arc of the throttle. It'll be slightly longer than the straight line ruler length of travel. Retail pricing at the time of this review is $649 US. Winwing has decided to initially offer a significant discount, selling the Orion for $499 US. Hopefully the reduction will offset recent shipping cost increases. Shipping costs will vary depending on your location. The Orion is sold as a kit with both stick and throttle combined. They may offer to sell them separately at a later date. The joystick, throttle, and their bases are of solid construction. The layout of operational critical controls is good to excellent. The hardware appears of high quality. Audio and tactile feedback is positive. Readability and illumination appear good. Their innovative afterburner and cutoff detent solution is sure to be copied by their competitors. The initial offer price is lower than lesser featured, high-priced competitive products. Cons. The Orion had no failures or faults that I could find. I dinged Winwing on a couple items in my previous 2 reviews. They responded by firing at least one switch supplier for bad quality control issues. I can say overall, I am impressed with the Orion and believe that anyone should consider this system as a potential addition to their rig. And to close the summary, sometime in 2021, Winwing is planning to introduce an interchangeable F16 throttle and stick to the Orion HOTAS. These items will work on the larger F18 Taurus Libra system as well. Links to Winwing's 2 online stores are below. This is Kelso, and I thank you for your time.